And I think all of us need to figure out how we are going to build those stories, compelling stories, and we are going to tell those stories, then sell those stories. So it's not storytelling. I sometimes call it as story selling. My team is involved in two kinds of questions, right? One is, are we building the right product? And are we doing it in the right way? To me, anyone who has an impact on customer experience or product experience is a designer.
An Apple tends to worry more about the form, whereas an Amazon is ruthlessly functional.
First of all, you're not comparing apples and apples.
Apples and Amazon. So Abhijit, good evening and welcome to the Yellow Couch series.
Thank you, Saurabh. It's a pleasure to see you again and talk to you again. And it's
Awesome.
It's nice to be here.
I realized that we go back 20 years. I started my career in 2004 as a UX professional, and you were my first manager.
Wow, I remember that. Thanks for reminding.
My first lessons in process orientation and getting a strategic understanding of a problem came from you. So thank you for that, for kind of laying the foundation, for the beginning of my UX design career. As I was discussing with the team, the Yellow Couch team, who we can talk to about design leadership and scale, I couldn't think of anyone better than you, Abhijit, to kind of complete that circle for me, at least, because, started there and now to have that conversation again with you to talk about design, scale, impact, leadership.
Yeah, well, before we do that, right, I must say that, I remember the time when you joined the team, and I think you were as prepared as you are today. It just made my job easy.
Thank you. Great. So let's jump right in. Over the years doing UX design work, I have realized that the terms leadership, scale, impact are not necessarily spoken in the same sentence with design. In some parts of the world, yes, some organizations, yes, but in large parts of the world, not yet. And so we felt that this was a very important topic to discuss with you, somebody who's kind of holding the flag for design leadership at Amazon, and of course, your journey as a designer over the years. So I guess I wanted to start off by asking you, how do you define leadership in the design context? And what are some of the qualities that you feel are really important for leading any kind of design effort?
No, a great question, and thanks for getting started with such a expansive question, right? That's about design and about leadership. I think the way I look at it, Saurabh, is that, when you talk about leadership, right, of any kind, I think we need to draw any prefix that it comes with, right? To me, design leadership is essentially just a leadership. You happen to come from a design function, that's your specialty, that's your background. But ultimately, when you are a leader for everyone that you work with. That includes your team, design team, and that includes the team that you work with, who may not be reporting into you, but you work with them on a day-to-day basis. And in many cases, you have to provide and extend your leadership to your upper management as well, right? So because you are the voice of the customer, you are the voice of the wine, and you need to understand your own superpower that you are as a wine leader. And will come across as a thought leader, as a champion for design, or for all the org, not just your own team, right?
So Abhijit, can I just ask a follow-up? I've always felt that designers have this imposter syndrome when it comes to accepting the word leadership. Why is that?
My observation is that there is a bit of a hesitation when it comes to ownership. When you talk about ownership, I'm talking about a single-threaded ownership of on the design, right? And its impact and its value and its ability to kind of demonstrate its ROI. I think it's end-to-end ownership of design, right? And to some extent, designers, as you rightly put it, it's that imposter syndrome that, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm bringing is not enough for me to really own it and drive it for the organization, right? I think to some extent that hesitation comes from that, which is to me, one of my professors at Stanford very eloquently put it, right? He says that whatever has got you here will not get you there, right? Your design background, your design experience obviously has got you to a point where you are leading design for a product or for a team. But what's next, right? How do you kind of really scale your impact? How do you kind of really come across as a leader for your organization? I think that is very, very critical. I think the other thing that very often is expected from leaders and specifically from, say, design leaders, since you asked that question, right, is about adding to that product thinking, right? Are you really holistically bringing design to the table for the company? Are you really adding to the product thinking, or are you still kind of buried in and what craft and tools that you are using, right? What are some of the challenges that the product is facing in the market? What are some of the headwinds and the tailwinds that the business is facing? And how are you aligning your activities in support of that, right? So that becomes very, very critical. And for really understanding, your business, what's the business model of your company? How does the company make money? What is the go-to-market plan for your product? How do you sell the product? How do the customers integrate that product? So having that into a holistic view on the product is very, very important. And that's what I call it product thinking. And that's expected from the designers. And that's how we will up-level the design leadership.
So Abhijit, you talked about ownership, right? Do you think it's simply about the fact that when it comes to owning the business metrics that are related to the success of a product, they typically don't tend to be in the design leaders kind of KPI? Is that one of the reasons why there is that distance from really owning the outcome?
I've been asked to do that question very often in some of the orgs that I work with, right? And I've also seen orgs which are kind of going, their design teams kind of come up with their own OKRs. To be honest, I think that's where you start moving away from really impacting the company and trying to kind of see your bubble, right? Because it always baffles me that how can a design team have a separate set of KPIs which are not KPIs, right? So I would definitely not encourage anyone to kind of create your own set of KPIs. Of course, there are a set of things that you want to do as a hygiene thing for running a design practice, right? And you want to focus on the career development of your team and their own growth and some of the impactful work that you want to do, which is more inward facing. But when it comes to your OKRs or KPIs, I think they all need to align to whatever the North Star metric is for your or for their company, right? And it has to be one single North Star metric for the entire company, right? Everything will roll up into those KPIs, right? And those KPIs are obviously tied very tightly to the business goals, right?
Right.
And then it can change from, based on where the company is in its own life cycle, right? The companies, like if you're working for a startup, your KPIs are different than you're working for an established startup or mid-sized company versus you're working for an established enterprise, right? So you need to understand what are those business objectives, what is it that a company is trying to achieve. At the same time, understand what the long-term vision is.
Abhijit, how often do you see the CDO role now in organizations? Is that like a norm now in the US at least?
Not really. I mean, just take example of the company that I work for. We do not have CDO. And to be honest, I think, there are very few companies where that model, top-down model has really worked. The reality in today's world is that, these enterprises are a collection of different business units, different products, different teams, right? And very often the teams are highly decentralized. Having a CDO function sometimes is not in the favor of really providing that kind of business agility, right? So you take a bank, any large bank, they have got a consumer-facing business, they have investment banking side of things, they have mortgage. All these are fairly different businesses. Also trying to serve different kinds of customers, right? In some cases, you are serving institutional customers. In some cases, you are serving retail customers, right? So having one single CDO, of course, it makes sense to have a one single unified CEO, but you'll also see that there are separate CEOs running separate business. And there is always that debate whether should the design team be a centralized team or should the design team be deeply embedded in product teams. The opinion in the industry is divided. If you ask me for my own opinion, I think I would love to have design which is deeply, closely embedded with the business team, right? Instead of trying to forcefully centralize them. I would rather, because sometimes the moment you're centralized and you're acting as a shared services team, right? And that kind of distances you in design team from the actual business decisions. I'm not saying that the designers need to report into different business leaders. The designers can still report into a centralized design function.
Yeah.
But their alignment should be with respect to product teams and business unit.
So you're saying a hybrid structure?
It's pretty much a hybrid model, a matrix model, however you want to call it. I know I personally hate this concept of a solid line and a dotted line, but that's a reality in today's world, right? As long as you are very clear about which one is the solid line and which one is the dotted line and how thick are those lines are.
Yeah.
And establishing them very clearly is very, very critical, so that there is no confusion in terms of owns which part of the business and the decisions that come along with it.
So Abhijit, you worked with various companies as an employee. You've also consulted with a whole host of diverse set of companies. First, your experience on the inside, right? Working as a design leader across organizations. How has the Amazon experience been different compared to the other experiences you've had?
I think every organization is unique, or it has its own culture, and it has its own story in terms of how the company is developing itself, right? At Amazon, obviously, there are a lot of stories that people hear about Amazon and how Amazon is customer obsessed, and a lot of that is something that I experience day out. I think it's really the speed and scale at which the thinking is encouraged at Amazon, right? And that kind of makes Amazon an exciting and interesting place for someone like me who is looking at how do I kind of really scale the impact of my work and how do I contribute to solving problems of tomorrow, right? So it really has given me that kind of a very broad canvas to explore and exercise my experience in the field of design, and also extend my thought leadership to my broad partners. It's a very different place in many ways. It encourages a lot of experimentation. It pushes the ownership down to the teams working in the trenches, very close to the customer experience. And that kind of makes the work very, very, very interesting because you're constantly learning, plus having leadership principles, which are probably known across the globe, right? Check-based logos. And that kind of provides a structure or scaffolding for the entire company to operate, right? So although we are highly decentralized teams, it's very easy for me to connect with other product teams or other design teams within Amazon because we all use the same language. We all exhibit the same leadership principles and behavior that come along with it, right? So it just becomes a common language. At the same time, it allows us to kind of basically speed up our decision making.
Yeah.
Right?
So Abhijit, when you talk about speed, give me a sense of, how fast is fast.
It can be dazzling to in many ways, right? Some of the work that we do and some of the decisions that we take in a matter of weeks has taken multiple months, in some cases, couple of years in my previous orgs. Kind of a speed that at which I, right? I think that's what makes things exciting. Of course, we do have a structure in place which allows us to make sure that we are not being reckless, right?
But is there tolerance for like moving fast, of course, but then failing fast?
Oh, 100%, 100%, right? So, and that's the reason we have our own, mechanisms that we have, like, writing PRFAQ, which is public release and our FAQ document, or doing the prototyping and doing validation with the customers. With those tools and mechanisms, it's easy to validate your product idea or your business idea and make changes. Right? Or in some cases, just drop it because that things have it's already an out idea, or it doesn't make sense for Amazon to invest into a particular idea as a business, right? We have a concept of one-way door decisions and two-way door decisions, right?
Okay.
So one-way door decisions are the ones that have direct impact on the customer trust, right? So the decisions, of course, kind of go through a lot of scrutiny, and because those are expensive decisions. And there are two-way door decisions where the cost of reversing a decision is low, interest is low, right? So, and those decisions are passed on further down to the team, right? Because anyone can take right? A designer can take a two-way door decision, whether it's going to be a blue button or an orange button, because that's to have a major impact on the customer trust. But if it's about pricing of a product, then that's a one-way door decision.
No, it's very interesting. As a design philosophy, I want to ask you something about that. Like to an outsider, to a layman, it feels that, if I was to take an example of an apple, right? An apple tends to worry more about the form, right? They're more form oriented, whereas an Amazon is, I don't know, maybe ruthlessly functional. Am I right in this kind of analysis, or that's just a perception?
No, it's a great question, right? And fortunately, I did study at the Stanford School of Business, Graduate School of Business, and now I can relate how to respond to a question like that, right? In a more structured way, right? So I think if you compare these two companies, right? First of all, you're not comparing apples and apples.
Apples and Amazon.
I think there are companies with different business models, right? So there are companies which focus on, for example, if you look at something like Apple, and especially the Steve Jobs philosophy of perfection, right? It's about product excellence. And then there are companies like Amazon where, of course, product excellence is important, but then also there is an operational efficiency and operational excellence. Similarly, from the other large companies, right, they have a focus on, customer service, right? That's really the core of a company, what company stands for, and we reflect that into your business model.
So these are two different flavors, essentially.
Different flavors, absolutely.
And it's about being true to who you are, your ethos, and then just kind of going for that, rather than trying to be someone you're not.
Exactly. Right. I mean, you can compare that with companies like, say, Ferrari and Toyota, right? Both are hugely successful companies.
Yeah.
Very different product positioning, different target segment, different market that they're trying to penetrate, and just the brand and the way they kind of come across are very different.
It's a very interesting way to answer this question, because when people compare digital experiences, right, from the outside, they think they're comparing apples to apples, right?
Yeah.
And an Amazon digital experience versus an Apple digital experience, they're just looking at that and thinking, okay, one is like this, the other is like this. Why is that? And so thank you for answering that. I think that's really well said. Now, jumping back into design leadership, with the last year, the generative AI, how do you see design leadership in the context of this new dynamic? on the scene? And how do you see this evolving in the next 5 years?
I think what we are going to see and experience in the next 5 years is going to be at least 10x of what change what we have experienced in the last 20 years.
Well,
I know we don't have an equivalent of a Moore's law.
well, what they should be.
Exactly, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's what I anticipate that's going to happen in the next 5 years. We have already seen how some of the mega trends have changed the landscape of business and consumers alike. Right? I think that is going to be a big change. One of the things that I've noticed with this emerging technology and eagerness to adopt these technologies to change is really focused more on the business model innovation that we're seeing in the market. It just unleashes a completely new way of doing business. Some of the traditional companies are going to completely change and transform their business model. Right? There will be many other ways. Some of your traditional revenue channels are going to shrink. So that means you will be forced to think about new revenue channels and think about how you can transform your business to adopt the new reality of the world.
Do you think we'll still be dealing with a lot of screen design kind of problems, or do you see voice-based interactions really coming to the fore? I know there's this, there was a product that got launched about 2-3 months back, Rabbit R1. There was a lot of buzz around that, and I have my opinions on that. But I wanted to kind of ask you, as you see the next 5 years and the changes that are going to happen, tactically, what does that mean for the footprints and the interaction modalities?
The screens will be there. I would say the screens will be everywhere. Right? It's definitely going to be a multimodal world. You will see the way we interact with tech and the way tech interacts with us. Right now, it's more we reaching out to tech. I think you'll see a reverse of some of that, where they are reaching out to us and prompting us, and nudging us, hopefully in a seamless way. We will see a lot of that. Yes, voice-based interactions will be more mainstream, more common. But I expect that the screens will have their own space. I think the context of our workspace is going to change, right? Imagine that right now we are sitting in a car, we are facing the front, we are facing the dashboard, we are looking through the windshield. Imagine that now those things exist. The car is autonomous.
Yeah.
Right? So there is no front, there is no back, and you could be facing each other in a car.
Yeah.
So what would that experience and that specific of use? What does that mean to have an interface? Right? So that's going to change quite a bit. I think what we have seen over the last 15, 20 years with digitization is a lot of automation. I think what we are going to see in the next 5 years, we are moving from automation to autonomous.
Interesting.
Right? And that's a big difference, right? Right now, I'm interacting with the system. I'm still kind of taking certain decisions. I still need to kind of accept the receive. A lot of the tasks that we do on day-to-day basis will be autonomous. So they're just happening. You don't even have to think about those tasks, right? They're just happening, and the technology reaches out to you only when it needs a human intervention. Now that will open up a very different set of interaction paradigms that we need to design for. Right now, because it's a new shiny object, right? It's like everyone is jumping onto it. I think one of the fascinating things that's going to happen to the field of research and design is to really finding out those use cases which are transformative in nature, right? Which are going to truly seamlessly integrate this new tech into the user lives and to completely transform those experiences, right? I want to be careful not using the word delight here, because I have the evidence of that, but you can also create delightful moments. And I think the delightful moments will come not from the interactions, but from the lack of interaction. Right?
That's really interesting.
Right?
The lack of interaction.
The lack of interaction is where you create delight, because then I'm not thinking about technology. I'm just thinking about my life.
So that actually brings me to my next question. So if the lack of interaction is going to be a new metric for user delight, what role do design leaders play in that new ecosystem?
To be honest, I think the jury is still out in terms of how this is going to impact or change our profession or the creative process in general. It just makes our profession much more interesting, right? Because there will be more opportunities for people to come up with creative use of all these technologies. I anticipate it's going to create new user personas that we have not thought about. So that will require more research. That will require more testing. That will require more design, right? Because
so more, not less.
More, I would say definitely more, but not less. Right? It's just that I think a lot of our heuristics that we use, that we have been using for the last maybe 15, 20, 40 years, some of those heuristics will need to be refreshed. There will be new research, new models, mental models, new mechanisms that will get developed, new interaction paradigms will get developed, and that will become the new norm for the next generation of interfaces.
So, Abhijit, as a design leader, if you had to prepare up and coming aspiring design leaders for the next 5 years, what do they need to have in their arsenal to be ready for this new world?
I'm going to give you my perspective in terms of how I see this evolving, right, and how these trends which are going to change the way the designers will operate in tomorrow's world. Going back to what I said right in the beginning, right, that having that understanding of business thinking, understanding the evolving business model is something that we operate on the designers, right? You look at even a 100-year-old industry like banking, it has changed over the last years. It's going to completely transform as we speak, right?
So business understanding.
Business understanding.
Okay, deeper business appreciation understing. Okay,
absolutely. And be able to understand how the business models are evolving and new business models are emerging. That's going to be important. The second thing that I would say is going to be a domain understanding, right? Having a deeper understanding and appreciation of what are some of the durable industry trends that are evolving, whether it's healthcare, whether it's travel, hospitality, whether it is high tech.
So you say deeper understanding, Abhijit, but I've always heard about the T-shaped person, right? A designer being this T-shaped person. There's a kind of a broad understanding of a lot of things. Yeah. The one understanding that we have in depth is design. And I've always heard that is a good thing, because then that allows us to ask the stupid questions, bring in fresh perspective. But you are saying you need deep expertise in a domain to be relevant.
Absolutely. I think having that kind of a industry specific understanding of because it kind of ties back to point number one, which is the business thinking.
Right.
So you need to kind of have that balance of, yes, what's the business thinking? What's the domain that I'm operating in or the company is operating in, right? What are some of the trends, durable trends that are emerging in that industry, right? Because each industry is going to go through a massive transformation as we speak, right? So there are not many people, if you look at even automotive as of today, right? Automotive industry, we have been building cars for 100 years, right? That's not how the cars are going to get built for the next 100 years. We will have to relearn how the industry operates, right? And we are at a cusp of that transformation, where all these industries have to kind of go and reinvent themselves.
Well, it's very interesting.
Now we talk about healthcare, but it's going to be a combination of health and maybe even insurance together. I don't know what that industry, what we are going to call that industry, right? Imagine that you have your pharma companies, your health systems, and your insurance and fees going to converge. Imagine that you have a company or industry that emerges which unifies all of these things with help of technology. What are you going to call that?
So this convergence that's going to happen is going to be very interesting. And I guess it's up to us to connect the dots.
Correct, right. And some industries will transform early, some industries will take time. Today we see there are industries which are still lagging in terms of their own digital transformation.
When you mentioned deep expertise, I was recently reading about the downfall of design thinking, right? And one of the critiques I read was that design thinking created a set of so-called design leaders that were doing design theater, not real design, because it was a very kind of shallow understanding of design and its application to a domain. And so not only are we talking about deep expertise for a designer to have in the domain, but I guess for businesses to also appreciate design, I wanted to see what you think about the fact that design thinking is now kind of on its downward trend. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's the unfortunate fallout of a hype cycle, right? That we have seen. I think companies and many companies that I have seen and have worked with as well have tried to disrupt their own models by trying to bring in this creative energy and creative thinking into their transformation, right? And obviously it was fueled by some of the big names that we hear, right? And that becomes easy because when you have one of the big consulting companies coming and talking about design thinking, right? It's easy to get carried away without really understanding how that is implemented, right? And that's where many companies, it has remained as a tool, not as a mindset. And as you know, being the design profession for so many years, right? Design thinking is not a 1 or 2 day workshop or something that you
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? It's the adoption of a human-centered way of working, collaboration across the entire product life cycle, right? And putting multidisciplinary teams together so that the ideation is holistic, the prototyping is holistic, and you are coming out with best of the ideas, and then you have a framework to rapidly prototype and test and validate the ideas, mix and match the ideas, and then bring out one idea that you want to put all your weight behind, and then deliver. And the delivery is not the end state; it's the beginning of a product's journey. So thinking about how you are going to, how that product is going to grow, scale, get refined, you need that. So you cannot just have design thinking that's happening at the headquarters for a few months, and then it becomes business as usual after you ship the product.
So Abhijit, you're saying as a design leader, I need business acumen, I need deep expertise. And what I don't want to do is propagate this notion of shallow design thinking in organizations that actually does more damage than good. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. In fact, recently, someone asked me, who's the designer on your team? And I said, to me, anyone who has an impact on customer experience or product experience is a designer. That includes everyone, right from my sales to my customer support, and everyone in between.
Right.
Because essentially you're having some kind of an impact on the customer experience. In some cases, if you think of an engineer, of course, we use all these labels to differentiate between different job families. But even engineer is a designer, right? Because the choices that they're making about the back end or the front end technologies are having a direct impact on how the customer experience comes across.
So either you're doing it consciously with awareness, or it's just an ad hoc kind of unconscious thing. And I guess that's what separates doing design as a discipline or just impacting customer experience without knowing it.
Absolutely. Even a product manager who is doing a backlog grooming, he is actually impacting the customer experience and the product experience. So, many ways, the product manager is also a designer because they are prioritizing which features get released and which don't.
So in a sense that you're saying that design is not the sole property of designers. Design is a mindset, is a impact mechanism or a mechanism of change that is everyone's responsibility.
100%, right? But we need to be careful because when we say it's everyone's responsibility,
Yeah, there's a flip side.
right? Yeah. So I still want designers to kind of really hold that, we are the custodians, but at the same time, making sure that, we are lending the help and guidance and guide rails to the other teams and making sure that, like you said, right? A lot of people don't realize, they think that they are doing engineering and they have nothing to do with UX and design.
Yes.
Reality is that they are in
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So making sure that you help them see that line of sight between their work and the impact on the customer experience is critical.
So do you tend to do this a lot in your day-to-day work, like helping kind of break the myths around design? Or is that something that is kind of pretty well understood at Amazon?
I would say it depends, right? I think, Amazon is just a expression of, what we see in the industry otherwise, right? There are teams or there are people who really get it. There are people who don't get it. And I'm not saying because they don't want to know it, right? I think what I've realized is that it's not, no one has a bad intention of the bad product. It's just that they don't know what they don't know. And then in that case, it becomes my team's responsibility to take those people, bring those people along and help them and sometimes and kind of unpack your process, invite them into your process. Instead of doing a handoff, I call it as a handshake, right? So you do a handshake with engineering or you do a handshake with the product management. So there is an overlap between your activities and your deliverables, right? So that's how you will kind of educate, you will influence people, you will educate people or to understand why you are insisting on certain way of doing design.
And I'm sure a big part of that is how you communicate, right? What words you choose, how do you articulate the design intervention you're doing? And so what advice would you give to designers and design leaders on how to better communicate the value of design or even the business value of design?
I think the first and foremost is just asking intelligent questions.
Wow.
Right. So I think asking questions is the most powerful form of communication.
Super.
Right. And asking informed questions is very important, right? So try and understand what is, again, going back, I might sound like I'm repeating myself here, but, ask them questions about how do you make money? How does this product make money? Right? How do you sell this product? Who's buying this product? Why do they buy this product? Why do they pay for it? What features do they pay for? How are they integrating this product? So by asking questions, you are seen as a trusted partner. You are already, you are saying that, hey, you are not just there to design things without really understanding how the design comes together in form of a business. So I think asking intelligent questions is the first and foremost. I've often seen, going back to a very first point, right? Imposter syndrome, right? Very often I feel that the designers are just not asking questions, right? Because they may think that these questions are not intelligent or we don't understand. Yeah. But in fact, if you don't understand it, that's even the reason that you should be asking those questions, right?
So you said asking intelligent questions, but then I guess we also tend to ask a lot of existential kind of, foundational questions. So how do you get over this notion of, oh, this is not intelligent enough? Can I really ask? And because that's probably one of the reasons why people stop themselves from articulating a question they have.
Yeah, no, I think I would say don't overthink whether you're asking an intelligent question or you're not. You're asking a stupid question, right? The answer will tell you whether it was an intelligent question or a stupid. Yeah. Uh, I think asking questions is more important rather than thinking whether those are intelligent questions. You want to ask questions which are going to help you do your job.
Yeah.
And it's okay to ask questions otherwise, right? Because ultimately you're part of the company and you want to understand how company is, right? And it's a fair question because that's how everyone gets paid. So it's important that you open up and you start asking those questions to business partners or find answers, right? Reach out to people. I think we are talking about communication here, right? Uh, how can you communicate the business value of design?
Yeah.
By asking questions, you're already communicating that you care about business.
Wow.
Right? If you don't ask that question, that basically means that you are basically burning more head in sand.
Yeah.
Right? So that's number one. I would also say that if you can help find answers to tough questions that businesses forget with, that's a great way to show value, right? And very often you go to a GM or to a VP and ask them, what are the hard questions that you're trying to answer? And if through your work, research work, design work, if you're able to help them.
That's such a great question, Abhijit.
Yeah.
It's an awesome question.
Yeah. So I typically tend to ask those questions at the beginning of the year, whatever your financial year is or whatever your year is, then say, hey, what is it that you want to solve this year? What are the questions that you have unanswered for your things, right? And then align all your activities and make that as your priority, right? So all the follow-up research, design work, prototyping that you do is kind of aligned to kind of get answers to those questions, right? In some cases, you already have business has answers, but with no confidence. Your job is to improve the confidence in those answers through iterative design, validation. And that's how you're kind of, influencing, that's how you're communicating the value of design, right? Because if imagine that, your VP is struggling with, VP product is struggling with certain question, you're not sure which direction. Then come back with some real data artifacts to support their decision making. Ultimately, it's their decision making, but you are basically putting with data and evidence. Right? I think creating a direct line of sight between your work and the business outcome is important. Right? And I think we talked a little bit about the North Star metric, right? Understanding what North Star metric is, and then think, hey, how are asking yourself and asking team that question, right? So, all right, so if you're developing this feature, how does this feature ultimately impact our North Star metric?
Yeah. So you said ask questions.
Yeah.
Help find answers to the tough questions, and develop a clear line of sight between your work and the business outcomes. So those are the three. That's really amazing points, Abhijit. So I'm going to take a cue from that and ask you, since it's still beginning of this year, what are the hard questions that you're looking to answer this year? As a design leader, I'm sure you've done that exercise for yourself.
Yeah, I have, and honestly, obviously, I won't be able to disclose a lot at Amazon, but, it's really about the product market fit, right? Most of my work and my team's work is really focusing on how do you really help my product partners to find their understanding of the product market fit for some of the products that we're developing, right? How can we do this more iteratively, working closely with the customers? My team is involved in two kinds of questions, right? One is, are we building the right product, and are we in the right way?
And the journey to answering those questions, of course, takes you through the whole process of research and iteration. This could be applied to a month-old startup or 100-year-old company and everybody in between.
Absolutely.
Wow, I wish people would make kind of a habit out of asking these two fundamental questions at every kind of key milestone of a product's journey. I think it would change the design landscape and the product landscape. I think that's really powerful. So we're almost at the end, Abhijit, and I want to kind of ask you, looking back at your evolution as a designer, If you had to go back to 20, 25 years earlier, Abhijit, what would you tell him that, you think would have made a big difference?
I think there are a lot of lessons I wish I had learned much earlier in my career, right? Sort of, and I'm sure I have a long list of things that I wish I knew when I was getting started as a designer or as a professional, as an engineer way back. The one that sticks out and probably comes immediately to my mind is the fact that everyone is in sales. I think that's the reality of working in the industry, working for any business, working for any company, right? In any profession, any job function, right?
Everyone is in sales. Yeah.
Everyone is in sales, right? You are selling your portfolio, your work, your idea, like your team, your business, your product, your service. And when I say sales, it's not in a bad way, right? It's not in
Sure.
sales.
Yes, exactly.
It's about influencing people, right? And ensuring that people can rally behind your idea. That is critical. And very often as a designer, we tend to think that, oh, it's not my job, right? I can do great work and then someone else will notice it, right? Which is okay, right? To have that kind of a strong belief and do some great work. But at the same time, you also need to externalize and make that work visible in form of stories, in form of your work, in form of what application method that you want to use, right? Because unless you express and unless you communicate, unless you share, you are not going to influence anyone.
Interesting.
Right?
So you're saying good work doesn't sell itself. You have to sell it.
Good work doesn't sell itself 100%. You need to find sponsors. You need to find them who will support your idea, right? And support you in that process, right? And I think all of us need to figure out how we are going to build those stories, compelling stories, and we are going to tell those stories, then sell those stories, right? No, so it's not just storytelling. I sometimes call it as story selling, because you can tell a story, someone can listen.
Story selling. That's interesting,
right? Because you can tell a story, but then if the story doesn't stick and people just walk away after hearing the story, what's the point? Yeah, I think that's pretty much. I think ultimately, I think understanding people is another thing. Right, I was introvert and I did not realize the power of networking, and it's a learned skill, right? Getting out of your zone and being comfortable reaching out to people very well.
Yeah, and I think the selling aspect and the introversion are connected, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I'll just to finish, right? I think reaching out to people not only when you need help, but even when you don't need help is important, right? So keeping the network alive and active is very, very important. I think a lot of the opportunities that I've got, and I've been very blessed to have such a wide and diverse network, is because of that. One of the things that I've started doing about 10 years back is to have lunch with a different person every day, go to the office.
Wow. It could be anyone.
Anyone from any business. I've had lunch right from the teams in finance to customer service to even building security.
This is so crazy. It's almost like I can think of this as a title for a great book by Abhijit. Lunch with a new person every day. There's so much.
One of my mentors who gave me this idea said, because we tend to build our own circle that we are comfortable with.
Yes.
Right. And we tend to gravitate towards people who are like us. And that basically closes all your ideas and all the impressions that you can possibly get from the outside world. Right. So you want to break that balloon that you could have built or the glass wall that you built around yourself.
But when people say, hey, get out of the comfort zone, think out of the box, this is such a powerful and doable way of doing that.
It's a very easy way to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are days when you just want to just eat your food in peace But I mean, it's such a great hack to be able to step out of your bubble, to have interesting conversations, and to take away something from every lunch meeting,
Yeah, exactly.
and to be able to fit it into your day seamlessly.
Yeah,
If there was a list of atomic habits for designers, this should be on the list,
absolutely.
right? Because it teaches you how to be a people person, how to understand human beings, how to think outside the box, and how to drive insight,
Yeah.
as you go about your day observing things.
Yeah. Just take out your product manager tomorrow for lunch, right? You will learn a lot. I mean, we talk about empathy. That's the best way to practice and exercise empathy, right?
Unbelievable. Yeah. What a great hack. I'm going to borrow that, Abhijit, and I'm going to do that. I mean, we are a much smaller organization, but I think even if I here made a practice of choosing one new person to sit with at the lunch table, that's going to be so powerful. I want to continue this conversation, but I know it's getting late for you. Abhijit, it's been such a fun conversation, right? On such a broad range of topics, but all centered around design leadership, scaling impact. I think it's really given me, a lot of tools and things to put in my personal playbook to get from where I am today to the next level. So thank you so much. When you do come to India, I'm going to book my one lunch with you. And hopefully we'll be able to put you on the actual yellow couch we have here. This was a virtual yellow couch, but I'm looking forward to the next one with you in person, whether in India or in the US. But thank you so much for taking our time and, sharing with us what you do.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. Where it just brought back so many memories of working together.
Likewise.
So I appreciate great work that you all are doing at your company, and I would love to come and meet the team and definitely lunch with you.
I look forward to that. Thank you so much, Abhijit.
All right. Thanks.
Have a great evening.
You too. Have a great day. Thank you.